here in the perimeter, there are no stars. Out here, we is stoned, immaculate.
Hello and welcome. This is the C86 show. I'm David Eastaugh. As you know, we love a special guest. This week it's going to be the turn of Micky Greaney, who I spoke to very recently to find out more about life, love, poetry, and all that other groovy stuff. Has had an amazing life in music and released a fantastic album titled And Now It's All This that has been recently released via Bandcamp, and I'll give you the link in the notes below, and has been in lots of other kind of musical combos and lineups. But you'll find out about all that in this fascinating interview. Just to say that during the interview, it was via phone, and the line would occasionally drop out, so we had to kind of redial and then catch up with the interview. So yes, there are a few interesting jumps, but apart from that, it's a great interview. Anyway, after several minutes of interesting but casual chat, we get down to that exciting subject that was the early formative years. Micky, it's over to you.
First album was Ziggy Stardust.
Oh, well,
my neighbour gave it to me because he thought I had a bit of talent.
Right, there you go. And when was that?
I think I was 7.
You were 7, and had that album been out long? Was it kind of quite current, or was it kind of a bit later on?
I think it was about 9 months old, something like that.
Oh,
I was 6 or 7 when I got given it, and then I just sang to it over and over and over again. And then my brother was a massive sort of like Stevie Wonder fan, Isley Brothers, and a lot of good kind of soul going on there.
Yes.
So, bit of George Benson. I wasn't overly keen on George Benson, but Stevie Wonder rocked my world, really. Yeah.
Yes, well, that's quite amazing. And also, yes, George Benson, he was a bit like yacht rock, didn't he? He sort of in the late 70s and early 80s said he suddenly couldn't move for the sound of George Benson in cocktail bars. And
I know, yeah, he got huge for a while, didn't he?
He very big. So did you come from a musical family? Did you have kind of anybody in your family that sort of directed you into?
I mean, there's kind of 3 main musicians in the family. My cousin John Hegarty is just mind-blowingly good, and Mick's done way more than I ever have, man. And then I'm sort of like number 3 in the family, really.
Yes. So when you were going through, that famous school period, and especially in the 70s, were you at that age where you could appreciate the kind of musical changes that happened during the 70s, with things like, it started with a bit of, I suppose, prog rock and heavy rock, and then there was West Coast music happening, and then pub rock, and then punk rock. Were you quite obsessed with music during that period?
Only certain artists, really, like Stevie and Bowie. I didn't come to the Beatles till I was much older.
Yes.
Yeah, but Stevie and Bowie, really. And then there was a good bit, like everyone used to sit out the front of the houses ran by us. So, and there was a good bit of, you'd put your stereo on in, like, Aston, where I'm from. You'd open your windows and play your music loud. So one living room would be playing, like, rebel songs, and somebody else playing a lot of Bob Marley, Commodores and stuff like that. A few people could play the guitar. I started when I was very, very young. But I think the earliest stuff was my dad teaching me rebel songs, when I was very, very young. And I think my first gig was he plunked me on at a beer table. I was about 3 years old, and he went, "Shut up and listen to this boy sing," right? And I belt away with the old rebel songs and all that kind of stuff. But always, just singing all the time. Learned the guitar very, very young, when I was about 7. My sister got a guitar when I was 7, and I was obsessed by getting it off of her.
Right. There you go.
I couldn't wait for her to finish rehearsing, and then she was a good bit older than me. Well, not a good bit, but 5 years when you're a kid. And so I quickly got better than her, and then everywhere I went, I took that guitar everywhere.
Yes. And what other kind of musicians were you kind of interested in at that stage?
At that stage?
Yes.
I hate Top of the Pops. I love David Bowie and I love Stevie Wonder. Like, you know, Stevie Wonder's 4 magical albums before Songs in the Key of Life. They really influenced me as a songwriter because I think he's a wonderful love songwriter, Stevie Wonder, which is much overlooked in his you know, his canvas really of work.
Yes, absolutely. It was always interesting with Stevie Wonder because I think Tony DeFries, who went on to manage David Bowie, there was a moment where he was almost going to sign Stevie Wonder, but from Motown, but then there was some sort of panicking in the Motown offices, and they managed to stop that kind of going through. So when you got to kind of 16, did you kind of at that stage leave school and go to work, or did you go to college?
No, always music. I used to do the odd job with my dad in factories, terrible jobs, but like, you know, factories shut down, stuff like that. So like I was out clubbing when I was about 14 at like the Rum Runner and rubbing shoulders with like Duran Duran. They were nice kids, you know, they'd buy you a drink.
Yes.
And stuff like that. That was a cool scene. So I got into that kind of stuff. It never really touched my soul, all of that, you know, new romantic stuff, but it was nice to go out to. It was fun.
Yes. Did you go to Barbarella's at this stage? Was that on your radar?
No, I'm too young for Barbarella's.
Right. There you go. Because this is kind of the home of Black Sabbath, isn't it, where you were growing up?
Yeah, I lived in Ozzy Osbourne's house for a little while, where he grew up. Yeah, I just rented it. It was just available. And
right.
cheap.
There was no blue plaque at that stage.
No, it's the one now.
I don't know, but I mean, they now go around putting blue plaques on most things, don't they? Where, you know, people will
come and knock the door and go, "Hey, man, can we come and look around the house?" And I go, "Fuck off, man," and close the door. And I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, Whitton, where I'm from, is quite rough, really.
Yes, there you go. And then during the 80s, you know, it was quite an interesting time. You know, obviously, you know, Thatcher gets in 79.
That I love. You see UB and, like, the B and, like, Dexys, right? I preferred the Birmingham bands to the Coventry bands, really, even though I'll give, like, the specials a bit of time. But I thought, you know, Signing Off and Dexys Midnight Runners and, you know, and then you had people like Stephen Duffy coming through as well and doing all this Tintin stuff as well, which he's now quite a devotee of my music, which is amazing because, like, he was just my hero.
Yes. Well, I think he was the lead singer of Duran Duran for a very short period of time.
A very, very short time, yeah.
Yeah, and there was a compilation that came out a few years ago about very obscure Birmingham bands. It was something from 1976 to 1981. There was like a 22-track compilation that came out of kind of intriguing bands. Because there was, yes, you had the Two Tones.
A nice way to turn 17, is that what you were on about?
I can't remember. Actually, I'd have to have a kind of look.
Has it got a picture of a little kid on the front with a massive leather jacket?
Possibly, but I will try. If I could locate it, which would be just marvellous, it would be incredible, but probably won't be able to do it in this moment.
Okay.
But
that's where the label comes from, this label. A Nice Way to Turn 17 is 17 Records. So that little kid on the cover of that album is Dave Cusworth's son.
Oh,
when he's little.
You had all that scene, didn't you?
Man, we grew up together a lot, man.
Oh.
And then, that between, like, Stephen Duffy and Dave Cusworth and Andy Wickett, they wrote a song called Stevie's Radio Station.
Yes.
Which Duran Duran took, and that is now Rio. There you go. So that's how... I was always the youngest, really.
Yes. My God, so you were quite into that, because they created quite an amazing scene, didn't they, Dave Cosworth in Birmingham and that region, that kind of glam sort of, I don't know, there was the Jacobites, wasn't there, glam punk rock, really.
The Ragdolls before that, and then sort of like Slim, who was the lead singer of the Ragdolls, and I was the lead singer of a band called The French Way. We were a bit like, kind of like Beatles and Stones, best mates kind of thing, you know, always hung out. And there was that kind of plurality. So my bass player from the French Way became Ragdoll's bass player. And then Slim quit the Ragdolls to come and sing in a band called The Girls with me.
Right. My God. And there was... Nicky Sudden as well. Did you come across him?
Yeah, Nicky, man, we were all, man, you're talking about my family there, man. We all grew up together.
Yes, because they did a lot of releases on a label called Glass Records, which I seem to remember.
Yeah, Dave Barker, yeah?
Yes, dear old Dave Barker.
Yeah, so, like, I went out to Prague. I was going to be on Glass, but we went out to Prague with David J from Bauhaus.
Yes.
And he was doing all sorts of stuff like shaking fucking utensils. Right.
So you got.
And I was like,
so you were already kind of getting into, forming bands in the 80s.
Man, I've had I kind of started. I mean, everything. Like we kind of met through busking, really. So there'd be Dave Cusworth, Slim, and Andy Wickett.
Yes.
And they won Buskers of the Year.
Right. Blimey.
In Birmingham. And there was a big prize. I think they got £600 for it, something like that. And then this snotty-nosed fucking kid from Aston started... This is how they noticed me, you see. There was one little roundabout thing, like Subway.
Yes.
And they were like, fucking hell, we usually make more than this. And they could hear me wailing away, and they'd come over and had a look in my guitar case, or whatever it was, a hat.
Yes.
And they were like, fucking hell, he's making way more money than us. That's where all our money's going. He's getting it, that little fucking scrawny cunt. You know what I mean? Right. And that's how they were sort of like, he's a bit good. And then we all became friends.
Brilliant. God, that's an amazing sort of...
I think I did about 60 gigs with the Ragdolls.
Right. God, the Ragdolls, yes. And there was...
And I'm Your Puppet, the... is it the Bounty Hunters or the Jacobites? Or is it just Dave Cusworth? I can't remember. But that's me and Slim singing backing vocals on that.
Right. God, that's amazing. They
very, like, from the roots of the fruit, really. Mate.
Yes.
And this lot.
Yeah, because I love one of their songs that Nicky and Dave did called Big Store, which was just fantastic. It was a really...
I'm going out tonight, shopping at the big store. Yeah. I'm no fun time, I'm no fun at all. So that was about everyone that was hanging around at the time. I was a little bit too young to be written into that song, but it's all about members of the Hawks and stuff like that.
Oh.
It was about, that's also about Stevie Cusworth because he'd be a bit restless. So that was their kind of like kooks. So if he wouldn't sleep, they'd go into town with him.
Right. Got you. God, that's such a great scene, wasn't it? And then as the 80s progressed, I mean, at this stage, it was quite interesting. We had, I suppose there was the mainstream charts. That was the Blitz Kids and that Trevor Horn production with Spandau Ballet and Sade. And then you had a sort of the indie scene that started to appear, Echo and the Bunnymen, Julian Cope, and then, the Smiths had this big period in 5 years of the 80s. What was that kind of next musical journey as we sort of trundled through that famous decade for you?
Well, the thing is, I was saying to Slim, like, look at us, we looked a bit like Bowie and Mark Bolan at the time. And I went, well, you know what I mean? You're in a band that sounds pretty much like the Rolling Stones. You're never going to get signed. Let's be pop stars. So we went off and didn't do all that Maida Vale stuff or Peel sessions. We were doing like standbys for like Terry Wogan's show and stuff like that, which we didn't get because I was very much into the idea of like, that me and Slim would be pop stars, but it's harder than it sounds, really.
Yes, but...
And then, so me and Slim sort of like parted ways for a little bit and gave up the sort of like boy band thing that we were kind of onto. And I briefly joined the Surf Drums when they reformed the second version of the Surf Drums. I was in that with like Pete Tweedy and Dave Keogh and a few types. So,
yes.
We do nice little gigs and we're working with Slaughter Joe and all that kind of stuff. That was really fun, that band, because it wasn't my band. I was just in it.
Yes. And then, did you ever kind of get into the studio and record any material at this stage?
Yeah, there's tons of stuff, yeah.
Yes. Is much of it available now, or is it still sort of in interesting archival states that need to be brought together?
Well, there's like probably like over 1,000 songs really that I've recorded and written and stuff like that on various takes and stuff like that. We're just kind of getting them together, I guess, you know.
Yes, and as the 80s progressed, obviously people got very excited. We had the red wedge what time with all the political stuff with, you know, the Redskins and Billy Bragg. How did you then sort of navigate that period as the 80s?
Well, I mean, I did a lot of roadieing for people, you know, so like I wanted to sort of like learn how to plug everything in and out, and my best friends were like a Rastafarian band originally called Unity, but then they went on to become a heavy metal Rastafarian band called... They became heavy metal, and then, like, the lead singer, like, knew I loved doing reggae, and a lot of the boys in the band still like playing a bit of reggae. So I formed a band called Still the Thief.
Oh, yes.
It was a reggae band. And I mean, like we was a proper band, you know what I mean? Like we supported the Christians. I think they were number one at the time, and we literally blew them off the stage. They said like, because they were playing like, you know, pop reggae, and we were playing like full on dub.
Yes, because there was a lot of bands. There was the Liberators. There was obviously all the straightforward reggae bands like Misty and Roots and Steel Pulse. But then you had other ones that were like the Radical Dance Faction and kind of crusty bands, you know, kind of crusty traveller kind of bands that started to appear in that festival scene.
Not so much. My thing, like I'm from like Aston and Answorth, so it's like pure reggae. Like David Hines lived around the corner from me, so I'd see him buying a yam on Whitton Road, and he'd go, "Yo, Sting, you all right, man?" So he always called me Sting.
Right, blimey, there you go.
Yeah.
And then, what happened to that band? Did it last very long?
Well, it was only sort of like a thing to do, really. It was like, you know, I like coming up with loads of ideas and trying stuff out. I'll write a whole musical to get one song out of it. I've done that a few times. So I like playing with concepts and stuff, you know.
Yeah. Because that, you know, I just found that compilation I mentioned about this one in Birmingham. I mean, it's post-punk Birmingham, and it's called Unseen, which was from 1978 to 82, and it features people...
I wouldn't know that, but who's on it?
So there's Swell Maps, there's a band called Dada, which features John Taylor from Duran Duran, the Prefects, TVI, the Hawks, the Nervous Kind and the Bible Belt, Joe Crow, Nicky Sudden, Cult Figures, the Au Pairs, Vision Collision, Dance, and there's a guy called Matthew Edwards on lead vocals on Dance.
Yeah,
and also
English kid, that is. Like, they're all my mates, but they're all slightly older than me.
Right, and fast...
So the Nervous Kind, I used to play football with Greg at the Nervous Kind. He's out in Connecticut now. He's a funny lad. Like the one time he got substituted and I was coming on, and, you know, you meant to shake hands. He just kicked me in the leg. He was a lovely lad. You know what I mean?
Delightful.
No, we all grew up together. I'm their baby brother, basically. They're all that little bit older than me.
Yes. So then, with you mentioned about writing a musical to get that one song. So as the 80s then progressed towards that dance world with, you know, Ecstasy came along in sort of 87, 88 time. And, you know, again, lots of indie bands decided that was it. They'd had their 5 years or 3 years of being in a band and they'd all sort of had enough, basically. How did you navigate that next period when you suddenly had, you know, the Manchester or Madchester scene that came?
It didn't interest me at all, man. Like, you know, that's like, I think I started really sort of like discovering a few other artists, a bit of Van Morrison, and like writing in different ways and to different criteria. Mostly playing in pubs, mate, and earning a living and busking.
Yes.
Around about that time.
So that was still part of that. And then as the 90s came along, you've got, you did these 2 albums, Little Symphonies for Kids, which came out in 94. So this was kind of that period which had that, a lot of bands started to get quite a lush orchestral sound, like, I don't know, Mark Armand, My Life Story. I think the Tinder Sticks came along a bit later. But were you quite excited by bringing in more kind of strings and orchestral moments to the musical landscape?
Kind of like it was always like something that I was looking at doing, but like mostly like towards the end of the 80s, like I'd seen a few girls in Dublin, and their scene was like different to our scene. It was like a lot more vibrant, Well, you'd walk into a bar and you'd have like Martin Scorsese talking to Declan McManus, and they're chilling out, having a nice time. And then so relationships came and they went. Then I auditioned for Commitments, got to the last 4 in that. But I really wanted to bring that Dublin vibe back to Birmingham. So I started doing a thing called the Catastrophe Club.
Yeah.
And then I did that at the Digworth Civic Hall, and I'd make a few bob, and I'd go busking, and I thought, it's time now to properly give it a go, and so I started writing all the songs for Little Symphonies and this album. So a lot of those songs are from that period, especially Little Symphonies, So it was great because I would have to. When I was doing the Catastrophe Club, sometimes there'd be 200 people there, and sometimes there'd be 6. So if there were 6 people there, I'd need to play some songs that people hadn't heard last week. So it's such a great vehicle to write songs and have an audience in front of you and get their reaction.
Yes.
And that was quite infectious, really.
And with that...
That's kind of it's like, what do you think of this one? Even though you're not saying what do you think of this one, it's like, I'm just playing this song and this is pretty good.
And had you...
Pardon me?
I was going to say, and had you teamed up then with John Hegarty for your...
My cousin John, we'd all go busking when we were kids and stuff like that, but that was more like a little bit later on when I was doing all that Ronnie Scott stuff, and we had quite a bit of sway, and so I think we got a support gig for John at the Olympia with David Gray, because he was playing Ronnie Scott's in Birmingham.
Oh yes.
And so I was able to do nice things like that, because things were going particularly well for me. And then Glenn Hanser, Glenn Hanser from The Frames.
Yes.
He turned up at that gig and he was going, I looked at John Hegarty that night and he was like a giant. You wouldn't approach him and stuff like that. So Glenn's gone on and he was impressed by John, but I set up that gig for John. And John's making the most extraordinary music to this day. John, my cousin John Hegarty, is all over Little Symphonies. He's bass, piano, everything.
And harmonium as well. So, yes, he was right there, wasn't he? So when you...
He's wickedly talented, almost to the point of, I can't learn my own songs, man. But, John's got one of these things where you can play a song and then he can just play it all the way through with you, actually improve it straight away. He's got an ear for music, which I haven't got at all.
Yes. So when you were in the studio, you'd got, it's a 12-track album. Did you have all the songs written, rehearsed, and ready to go at that stage?
Yeah, pretty much. I decided to give up drinking because I wasn't in a good state at all. My girlfriend had left me. And Hugh Harkin out of Mighty Mighty was a big fan, and I was putting a bet on in a bookies in Newtown, and he said, fancy making an album. He worked behind the counter at the fucking bookies in Newtown. Newtown's rough as well, by the way. Where do you live?
Norwich.
All right, just checking. But so then, yeah, Hugh said, like, do you want to make an album? And lovely thing is, like, you know, Bob Lamb, from when I was about 17, he never charged me a penny to record. Me and Slim, like, he just thought, right, he's got a bit of something going on. And and then when somebody said, you know, I've got a bit of budget to make an album with you, I was like, happy to say to Bob, but I can pay you for once, man.
Excellent.
You know, and like, he was mostly like a brilliant producer, absolutely astonishingly good producer.
Yes.
And then his studio was split in half, you see. Yeah, like you divide a living room, like Steptown or something like that. So there was a little studio next door, and there happened to be a few chaps in there, and they were called Ocean Colour Scene, and we were just the best mates. So there's like Simon and Steve Craddock are on it, and it was really nice. So you'd be able to pop next door, have a little listen to. They were working on Moseley Shoals at the time, and go like, right, we need to step up our game now. Go back in, do another thing, get back into them. They'd come in and go like, Simon, we need like penny whistle on this, like, and he'd come in, and like, he was so funny, man. They were just great. So Julia on Little Symphonies is basically just an afternoon with me and Steve Craddock.
Right. That's your second track on side one. Yes. Blimey, that's incredibly...
I really couldn't miss, could I, but how?
So were you on a label at that stage, or did you put it out on your own label?
It was just out on Hugh's label, right, which is... it's the label is Little Symphonies for the Kids, but he put the title of the label so big, people thought it was the title of the album.
Right.
So the album was meant to be one of these self-titled debut albums, like Bob Dylan, all that arky-manarky.
Yes, but it's because we love Mighty Mighty. They were actually on that C86 cassette, actually. I went to see them at the Norwich Arts Centre many decades ago. So
yeah, I think we were like, I mean, we were happy with the money, but like, he'd come in for about 2 hours and try and be like Phil Spector, because that's where it comes from, isn't it? Little Symphonies for the Kids.
Yes.
And he wanted to be like super, and we couldn't wait for him to leave, because, I mean, like, really, my music and his music pretty different.
Very different. He was very indie pop and a little bit scratchy.
Yeah, but he was a big fan, which helps.
Yes, absolutely. And I think
that's when I first got the idea of sort of like, okay, strings, like, I can arrange strings, I can write anything. John was a bit handy as well, my cousin, but pretty much the strings at that stage, like, I just walked into the conservatoire and I was like, Kid and Candy stories.
Yes.
Like, so I'd pick people out and try them out for a bit and then go like, well, you're a bit young, really. So I'd have to have like third years. But there was one, the girls that did Abbey Road with me, I thought, right, I've got to let them mature a little bit now. I've got to put them out on loan and let them do what they're doing. So
yes.
I did a few gigs, you know, and then when it started really getting going, I got them in. Because they were a tight unit. They were good crack. They'd play a game of football with you.
Yes.
And they'd pile into a car and do a little gig, you know. So they were the best fun, really.
So when you had that first album, which obviously was, you know, amazing sound, and then obviously there was a bit of a buzz, and then you came in for this second album, which then, this is produced by the one and only John. Is this with John Leckie?
John Leckie, yeah, like the Bends and Stone Roses.
My God. So at that stage, and you recorded it at Abbey Road and also Seesaw Studios in Cornwall. So had you got a big budget on this, with this release?
Oh, fuck all, man. You know what I mean? What I had was a really good song called Sweetheart, and totally believed in it because I didn't think anything was like it out there at the moment. And so we'd always have like a game of football after our rehearsals and stuff like that. I'd gone to see Nick Moore at the Barfly, the Water Rats, you know, in London, which was like a hot venue at the time. And I went to see him, and I went, Nick, like, you know, he was a moody bastard. He went, right, I'll fucking see you at the end of the night, and proper moody cunt, right? And I went, look, I know I'm good, but like, I'm not getting anywhere. What do I have to do? And he went, you're making it so complicated. He went, what's your favourite album? I said, at the moment, Ben's. He went, flip it over, and it will say who the producer is. Right, and he said, strangely enough, I'm working with John Leckie at the moment, part of his production company. So I don't think, he didn't put a word in for me or anything like that. So I went, wicked, man. Where is he? And he says, like, top of Tottenham Court Road, you can't miss it. So I met Safta Jaffrey. He had a tiny little office. I quite liked it. It was so organised. And, like, it couldn't have been smaller. And I went in there and, like, I give him this tape of... the other thing Nick Moore said to me, I was saying, I'm going to do 500 cassettes and give them to everyone. He went, do 12. Right. Do 12. That's all you need.
Yes.
Right. But me and my then girlfriend, we drove to London, and like I asked everyone who what their favourite album was and who their favourite producer was, and pretty much it was between, like, I think at the time Walsh was working with Ocean Colour Scene and John Leckie, and I preferred John Leckie. I said, all right, we're going I'm going to go and get John Leckie to be our producer. And pretty much the band thought I'd gone fucking completely off my trolley, right? And then I met Safta. He thought I was a bit mad as well. He was like, yeah, John only works with, like, signed artists. But they had started this thing, you know, this little production company. So Cooler Shaker and Muse came after me.
Oh, right, God. So there was a real musical zeitgeist at this point, wasn't there? There was a lot of excitement of who was...
Yeah, there was. It was that Scouse band as well. Find the right time, do the bad time to be good age, whatever. So he was working with loads of people.
Yes.
And then we'd actually... That lineup, we'd done a lot. A gig, and then we give the tape to John Leckie, and the next gig we did, our second proper gig with that band was just like, you know, A&R through the roof. Like, it was everyone, like, and it was a Sunday night. All the heads of A&R were sat down at the front, and I think it was Keith Wozencroft, I think that's how you pronounce his name, from Parlophone.
Oh, yeah.
He said to John Leckie and Saf, he went, get him in Abbey Road and we'll pay for it, you produce it, and we'll see how it goes.
Fantastic.
So, like, I'm fucking turning around to the band saying, right, okay, we're off to Abbey Road for Christmas.
And they said, bet we're not. And you said
so
no.
This is like, they couldn't believe what's happening to them, you know what I mean?
No, no.
But I always believed in myself massively, you know. I always, you know, totally believed in my abilities to get things done and make things happen.
Yes.
And then I think what happened when we went to Abbey Road was really, I might have been on a slightly different level to the rest of the band, to be honest. You know, they were like conservatoire students. They just graduated, in fairness, you know. The band were friends, and I think Leckie looked at it, and I think Parlophone looked at it. So I got a call on Boxing Day, and like my girlfriend of the time, she went pleased with me, man. Right, so Safta Jaffrey, you don't get a call, like, everyone goes to sleep at Christmas in the music industry. Everyone gets back in on the 6th of January. So it was Boxing Day. And he said, Mick, we've got a special deal for you. He was a really creepy guy, man. You know what I mean? Safta the Shafter, they called him. And he went, oh, like, Parlophone think you're so special, right? And I was like, he was talking to me and like, I've got the most amazing deal for you, right? And I was like, Safta, you're talking totally in the realms of singularity here. You're just only talking about me. And he went, well, they don't want anyone else. They want you.
Yes.
And I was like, well, dude, man, you know, we've done, which is the album that everyone's listening to now. I said, look, I think we did pretty good, like, for a band that's done 3 gigs. Let's, you know, try and finish it off a little bit and see how we get on with it. So we went to Sawmills, worked a little bit with John Cornfield, and then, like, Lecky was too busy with, like, all this Cooler Shaker and all that kind of bollocks, whatever that. Can't remember the name of that Scouse band, but he'd been in the last.
Oh, was it Cast?
Yeah. So he was like, so other acts that were on the label were getting away, and so no, I feel like we finished off the album, you know, and I feel like it was as good as any of their albums. But once the buzz has passed, mate, it's passed. And I never told the band until years later they didn't want you. Right, and then we went on and did some festivals, did a week at Ronnie Scott's, played at Ronnie Scott's in London a couple of times, and I was like, I can't tell them, man, this isn't going to happen. And, like, you know, we got... The deal we were offered was just crazy, you know. And then we got offered, like, an even more massive deal with Epic Records. But it was a similar deal to the one that Jeff Buckley signed to, which is a bit of a, like, you know, it was like 5 albums, and like, I didn't know if I had another 5 albums in me at the time, but like, clearly did. But, and then, like, you know, out of that, like, I'd be paying all them wages for 5 years for 12 people, and then, like, man, there was no way I was going to make money. So, like, the terms of the contract were, you know, if I farted and it was recorded, then, like, that would reignite the... Like, I had to let 5 years go past without doing anything.
Blimey, that's amazing. So you got sort of an advance, and you were doing quite well, and you'd got a band as well at this stage.
Yeah, up to 15-piece, but, like, we settled on a 12-piece band.
That's a very expensive hobby, isn't it, really? Because I know My Life Story and even Dexys, I think they were thinking, in retrospect, they probably thought we could have done, if it had been smaller, we could have been a bit richer, but unless...
No, but we were earning a lot of money at home. Like, everyone, like, all our gigs were packed, so, like, it was all affordable.
Yes. And were you going out as... Were you going out as your name at this point?
Yeah, Micky Greaney Band, yeah.
Yeah, blimey. It's
We changed it to Micky Greaney and his 12-piece orchestra for a while. We went up our own bums for a little bit, but...
And how did you manage to sort of be in the kind of the person controlling this? Did that add a lot of pressure to you, or did you enjoy...
No, not really, because, like, you know, I'm the gaffer, you know what I mean? I'm the boss. You know, I wasn't in the band. They were in my band.
Yes.
You know, like, I watched The Italian Job the other day. You know what I mean? I was like, your man Charlie, whatever his name is, Croker. I was the gaffer. The people above me were, I guess, John Leckie and the record companies, they were Noel Coward, if you will. But, like, I was the guy that put the gang together. And everyone looked up to me. Everyone knew I was, like, a bit of a better songwriter, more of a clue about music. What they knew, I knew a bit more, and all that kind of stuff. Not being a bigot, but they were just, like, amazed at what was happening around them.
Yes. I mean, I remember there was a brilliant film with Robert De Niro and I think Liza Minnelli called, was it New York, where he was the band leader, wasn't he? And yes, it was a long time ago I saw it, but I guess you had a similar role of conducting this kind of combo. Or not?
Yeah, I mean, like... Yeah, it's just like, you know, if I said be in my band, you were in my band.
Yeah. Did you have many personnel changes?
Yeah,
Did you have many personnel changes?
No, we had a lot. But I think there's about 31 people that played on Little Symphonies, and I think getting that band together, I think I used about 35 people putting it together, but settled on 12, and that's what went into Abbey Road.
Yes, and there's some amazing songs on there. I mean, you got obviously Sweetheart, but Yesterday, Today and Tomorrow is a fantastic track, and I Want To.
Thank you.
It Ain't Easy. I mean, they're really incredible songs, and they've got such kind of, a certain variety in the 13 tracks on that album. So you must be. So when that came out, how did it sort of get received, and what was the sort of general take-up of it?
It didn't get received. It was shelved.
And
yeah, they made an offer for me only.
Right.
So, and I was like, well, they've come this far with me. Most of them, like 2 of them was in my first band, when I was 17. I thought, I can't sack them.
No. You have to do... God, that's so tricky. So there was no way of negotiating this. They just weren't going to budge on it.
Well, like I said, my girlfriend wasn't pleased with me because it's like quarter of £250,000 offered me, right? But we weren't seeing that money, man. That was all going to be used up, Like 5 albums down the line, I'd start seeing some money. I met Jeff Buckley not a long time before he died. And he was a broken little pussycat, that boy was. He was on heroin by this time, and he was talking jibber-jabbering, talking way fast. And I thought, I ain't signing any deal like his deal, nothing like that. And so I knew about it. I knew what he'd signed. He just got hijacked,
Yes. And broken.
And a little bit, that was going to happen to me, and I thought, right, it's not happening to me.
Yes. So who kept the master tapes and recordings of that album?
Well, no, there are no master tapes, right? Apparently, Safta Jaffrey's wife is a bit of a hoarder, really. And Safta's dead. And I phoned him years ago, and I said, look, can I get my masters? And he went, I went out and came back in the office, and they were meant to plaster the wall where I keep the tapes, but they've built a wall, so all the tapes are behind the wall, right, which is clearly not true. But
yes.
So me and John Leckie had a good old laugh about that when we spoke not so long back.
Yes.
And so actually John had some cassette tapes that he didn't really like, the sort of it was a bit indie pop and Brit pop and all that kind of stuff, but he'd made his own mixes, and so we sent those to John Vickers, Woodbine Studio. John that did Ghost Town.
Yes.
But it's only like C90 and C60, and then we applied the magic of AI, which is what you're listening to on that, and we were able to get rid of certain instruments and turn vocals up and turn things down, which is quite amazing, really.
Well, absolutely. My God. So that's just... Yeah. That album has been just taken from cassettes that were...
Yeah.
God, that's incredible. It sort of survived so well. Yeah, blimey. So then, so once that project and the band, what did you sort of come to a kind of a slow decline during the late 90s?
No, I had 5 kids and wrote loads of brilliant songs and had various bands, like little tryouts of this and that and the other. But I literally couldn't do a gig. I couldn't make a sound, otherwise my contract would reignite. And Safta wasn't a boy to mess around with at all. If there was anything out there, anything at all, I'd have gone back. I'd have had to be in contract for another 5 years. So I had 5 beautiful children, wrote a lot of songs, made a load more music, various bands, always under the name of Micky Greaney. Never give a band a name after that. and then Pat Fish, God rest his soul, was a big fan of my stuff and from the Jazz Butcher, and he said, like, to David J, like, you got to hear this guy, you know, he's amazing, like, you know, he's something else. So we did a gig in a place called the Islington, which is actually an Angel.
Yes.
Brilliant, you're lovely. Right, and about 18 months later, he said, do you want to come to Prague and record and I'll organise an orchestra? And that was a complete disaster, really. You know, it was funded by a guy called Mark Warren. He's Vandervalk on ITV, like, my very good friend still. We're amazingly, we're all still really good. And, but David plays a different kind of music to me, and I was just like, mate, you know, this isn't going to work, really, what we're doing. And then my arranger came over very, very late and hadn't finished the arrangements for we had an orchestra on about 3 songs. So I'd already sacked David J, and he'd gone back to LA, and Mark had gone home as well. But it's like, so I was in there with the orchestra, and it was so late, and it was like, you know, and it was all out of time and stuff like that. So we kind of came home with nothing to work with. And then, so I sent, like, the orchestra bits to John Leckie, and one of the songs was Sweetheart that we did with the orchestra. And he went, what the hell are you doing Sweetheart for? We've done it. Don't you remember? It was brilliant. Which then made him, didn't make him, you know, he decided to then send, he knew I had some involvement with John Rivers, or like, and said, have a listen to this, see what you can do with this. And then that's how the album happened. That's it. Because John Leckie was pissed off with me that, like, I'd re-recorded one of the songs we'd recorded.
Right.
That led to all of this.
Oh, so that was the catalyst, your moment in Prague. So what happened to this guy? Was it, did you say Saf, what was his name? Was that Parlophone guy that, was he still alive at this stage?
No, Saf the Jaffrey ran a company called Taste Media. So all these bands, like, you know, Cooler Shaker and, like, Cast and the other one, wherever it was, Muse. So he was getting 30% off them for the first, like, 3-4 albums, like, you know, which is quite a lot, really.
Yes. So Saf the Jaff, did you say, what, is his name Saf the Jaffer?
Saf the Jaffrey.
Oh, just couldn't work. And on yes, well, I have to. But so then when John Leckie got that moment of, right, we need to sort this out, was that the catalyst for sort of putting this album together? You can see.
Yeah. I mean, I think that originally the guys from the label, they were like, let's do fresh recordings and stuff like that, and they were trying to get me to sing over the orchestra, like, from Prague, and I was saying, it's out of time. You wasted a day in the studio, yeah. And we even got the arranger over, and he went, it is out of time, isn't it? I went, badly, mate, really badly out of time. It's really rubbish, right? And so then they said, oh, Johnny Rivers has got, like, some tapes from John Leckie, and they said, do you want to come over and have a listen? And, like, so I did, and I was like, yeah, they sounded a bit fresh, a bit different to what was originally recorded, you know?
Yes.
Not mixed, different mixes to the ones we'd done in the 90s. Just a bit lighter.
Yeah.
And then Johnny does all this magic, like, so I shut the fuck up, really. I'm mostly out the front having a smoke, because I don't know how to do that, and I think it's often better just letting people do what they're good at. So I just buggered off outside and went in, and I went, yeah, that sounds banging, that does.
God, that's amazing. And so was this a project that was all kind of happening in the last couple of years?
I mean, like, obviously lockdown happened, so, like, Prague was before lockdown, and then I don't know, it just kind of collapsed into shape, really. It's hard to explain, but it's just kind of occurred.
Yeah, that's incredible. So has that kind of then inspired you to kind of look at making or recording new material?
Well, there you go, right? You know the bit where I couldn't, like, record anything because I'd be under contract.
Yes.
So from that dot, that's the year dot, that is, and then all the way up to now, those are the really good songs. These are songs I wrote when I was a kid, right? The really good stuff is yet to come.
Right, and you can now you're a free man. God, you sound like Prince, don't you? Being sort of a prisoner in the music industry. But are you now free to record material, and there's no problem with that?
Yeah, I own and now it's all this, thank God. And you know, the guys are free to license it, but all recordings are mine.
God, you must be so relieved.
Well, I haven't made any money yet. I will be when I do.
So what's the next 12 months going to look like?
Well, I'm going to get. I mean, like, I think the drummer I'm going to be working with he's touring America with like Deep Purple at the moment. I've never met him, but apparently he thinks I'm good. And a friend of mine, Roberto Delira, he's in a band in Italy called After Hours. And, like, you know, really, I'm just going to sit round in a circle. I'm in no rush. Next year's fine. I've been really busy, like amillionemails.com.
Yes.
Which is why I'm wrapping up the interviews. Like, you know, that's what I put on the what's it, you know, because
yes.
I want to go on to the next thing. It's really, like, you know, until something really quite big happens with the album, or, like, I don't know, like, it gets picked up by a different label or a DJ or something like that, then, like, we've done what we can do for now. I just want the boys to make their money back.
Yes.
It's a big commitment. They're two working guys, and they've had enough faith in me to, like, go, right, we're going to, and they don't particularly love their jobs, and we're going to save up and we're going to put your album out. Now, I'm not always the easiest person to work with, and we have our little fallouts now and again, but truly appreciate what they've done, and I just want them to get their dollar back, man, you know.
Yes. So you printed or pressed, was it kind of online?
They did it. I didn't do anything.
Right. Is this Chris?
I haven't done any of these, like, you know, the massive change in the profile, you know, and all these reviews and stuff like that. That is, and I'll be eternally grateful to these guys. Without them, none of that would have happened. Like, I played a gig about a year and a bit ago. I think there's 8 people there.
Right.
And that was in Birmingham. You know, like, I was, like, no one was coming to see me play, and then all of a sudden this has happened, and, like, you know, I'm on people saying, "Oh, you're on loop, you're on this, you're on that." You know, like, I never stop playing. Yeah, oh, I've got you on in my cafe all day long and all that kind of stuff. Like, so that's really nice, you know. But we're just not at that threshold yet, where, like, we've actually covered the manufacturing costs.
No, but it sounds like you're going to, sort of pick up quite a lot, because it's like you've got the vinyl, you've got the CDs, you've got the downloads, and a lot of publicity as well. So it must be.
There really, really is, right, and it is one of those albums that it is a long time ago. I think we would almost advertise it best by, you know, making something, well, that's recorded now. Because I know a lot of people like going, oh, it's a lost album and stuff like that. And then there's other people that are like going, oh, it's just an old album, isn't it? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Is he any good anymore?
It's tricky, isn't it? It's tricky. Well, I don't know. I mean, there is a surprising amount of interest. I mean, as you might have known, you know, Robert Lloyd from the Nightingales, there was a film made of him a few years ago with Stuart Lee called The King Rocker, which is centred a little bit around that King Kong, the great statue in the ball.
Yeah.
But there's been everyone's.
Yeah, Rob apparently is like a secret fan of my music over the years, actually.
Yes.
I've been told. I've no idea. I've never met the guy, but apparently he's kept an eye on me.
Yeah, well, I'm not surprised. And there's all these kind of reissues coming out, especially Cherry Red Records just love a box set of obscure music from 1976 to 1983. So it's surprising what people are putting out at the moment. In a way, though this is kind of music that was recorded decades ago, I think a lot of people are getting curious with, the past, not just because of, rose-tinted sunglasses, that just a lot of things got missed. I mean, I missed loads of stuff during that decade of my indie pop world of the 80s, because it was a little bit different then. You couldn't just kind of go and stream or listen to something. You would have to go and hunt something down, and sometimes you never found it. So that was the end of that. John Peel would play something, you think, that's brilliant, but apart from having it on this TDK D90 cassette, which is badly filed, I won't hear it again because I won't be able to buy a copy.
Yeah.
So there is an interesting kind of fascination with all this music that got made, and the quality of your album is amazing. So is there kind of, because you got the second album, is there plans to put the first album out at all, or is that even more?
Well, that's up to Hugh. He's kind of sitting on it, waiting for a leprechaun and a pot of gold to turn up at the end of a rainbow. Someone's going to offer him X amount of money.
Mighty,
that's up to Hugh.
Is it? Mighty holds the power. You never thought I'd hear those days. Yes, my God.
Man, in fairness, he paid for it, see?
Yes, well, absolutely. Well, he's getting to retirement age. He must be thinking, wow, what the hell? This will fund my holiday to Great Yarmouth or something like that. Anyway, it's all good stuff. So look, you're it's a fascinating story, and to be honest, in that way you have become a rock and roll survivor, because a lot of the people that you've mentioned in this story have sadly passed away, which is incredibly tragic. But so you must feel quite pleased that you're still in the game.
Well, alive, you mean?
Yeah. And also,
I'm only 57, man.
57.
Come on, give me a break.
Yeah, I know, but my God, I mean, 57. But yes, this is true. But then, I did a lovely interview with Pat Fish, and I was a bit shocked. And a few months later, when I heard the news, and quite a few people that you think, oh my God, that's awful. And the last album he made,
he was dying, man, and he made it all the way to Prague with us.
Right.
Yeah, he come over to Prague for that session. Come out with me. Believed in me that much, man.
God. Well, yeah, that was extraordinary, really. Poor old Pat. But that album that you put together, again, has such a kind of orchestral quality to it. Lush vibe. So, interesting.
Yeah, it was a lovely writer, Pat, man.
Yes. So look, this has been brilliant. I mean, if you could have whispered something to your 16-year-old self starting out, even though that person may have ignored it, which is probably very true, is there anything in particular that you would have thought, yeah, that's one of those lessons I've learnt in life that would have been good to know?
I think just, do what I did, really. I think French Way, my first band, was great. I loved them. But, I was from a rough area, had to do rough things.
Yes.
So, yeah, just carry on. 16-year-old me, just, do exactly what I did. I think I wrote the best songs of my generation, really. In the top 10 writers up there, your Tom Yorks, and of my era, really. I wouldn't rate Jeff Buckley as a great songwriter, great vocalist, but, I wouldn't really rate Noel in essence, but he wrote massive hits. You know what I mean? These people made money. I didn't. So ultimately, they're better than me.
Yes, I guess.
I did my thing. The important thing for me was to always believe in myself.
Yeah.
So from 16 to 6 to 3 to 199, always believe in yourself, and you can do anything.
And that is the end of the interview. Massive thank you to Micky for giving me the time for that. This has been the C86 Show, David Eastaugh. So if you want to contact me, you can on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Just do C86 Show. All these interviews have been archived on Spotify, iTunes, Podbean. It's true. Have a great week. Stay safe.